everybody, what's happening? This is Snake Sable from Skid Row, and you are watching 80s Metal Recycle Bin.
Hey, this is Rachel Bolan from Skid Row. I met Snake, actually we met twice. I had Scotty Hill and I had a band called Godsend, and we were like glam metal, you know, and Snake had a band called Steel Fortune. And years later, I go into a music store that's right down the road from where I lived in Toms River, New Jersey. We met again. I was like, you were in that band that played Fountain Casino? Yeah. So we were like, well, dude, I had a band with Scotty. I still had that band. He had another band with a bunch of his friends, and we just started talking. I was like, so who writes the songs for your band? He's like, I do. And I was like, well, I write a lot of them for my band too. So that's how we kind of got together, as a songwriting partnership. And then we had, I just went up and jammed with him and the band that he had at the time. And then Scotty Hill came in, and then we brought the other guys in, and then within a few years, boom. Yeah, well, Doc McGee managed us, and he managed Bon Jovi, and he managed Motley. So it was a little bit of nepotism of sorts going on, but you know, that's the nature of the business, right? So, and John and Snake grew up together. John was instrumental in helping us get noticed, you know, and get our music to the right people. And yeah, so then the we get signed by Atlantic, and we get the guarantee of getting the Bon Jovi tour for the New Jersey tour. And now, I mean, they're hitting the stratosphere after the New Jersey record. So we're like, wow, this is gonna be really cool, you know. And we were playing the Stone Pony one weekend, and the next weekend we're playing Reunion Arena in Dallas the day the first record came out. And I was really nervous about it, because it's like, okay, cool, we do really good in the clubs in New Jersey just because people know us. No one knows us in Dallas. No one knows our music. You know, they were pushing Youth Gone Wild, but it wasn't on MTV. It was barely on the radio at this point. And we went over really well on that first show. And I was like, wow, there might be something to this, you know? And the label flew down there, and this was all new to a bunch of kids from Jersey, you know? And it just started to steamroll. I grew up, I was a punk kid. I loved punk rock. And so Snake was like, as far as songwriting goes, he was the metal guy. Like, he turned me on to a lot of British metal bands when we met. And I was the guy, you know, if you live in New Jersey and don't like the Ramones, you get kicked out of New Jersey pretty much. So I think in the Northeast. But yeah, and I like the Sex Pistols and Dead Boys and Dead Kennedys and all those punk bands, the classic punk bands. And that's what I listened to. And I think our common ground was Kiss. And I think that was a common ground between all of us in the band. And yeah, so when we did Slave, it was a very natural progression. It wasn't like, hey, let's do a heavier record. We had our whole life to write that first record, and then we only had a year or so to write the second one. And just our way of thinking changed. You know, we got a little, you know, we're like, all right, we can do whatever we want type of thing. And stuff came out a little heavier, and did we sacrifice some fans and some sales? Yeah, probably, but we still made what I feel is a great record. I would say I write the bulk of the lyrics. Snake and I have a very, our songwriting partnership is great. We know our own strengths and we know our own weaknesses, and that could be part by part or whatever. Snake is the king of the opening line. Like, he can set up a song and then I just kind of take bits and pieces in the idea and run with it. And then we'll make changes and massage it here. And then, I don't like that. Oh, that rhyme sucks. So let's do this and that. But I do write the bulk of the lyrics. But like I always say, you have a song and two guys or one guy could write it, but it wasn't a Skid Row song till all five of us. And still to this day, till all five of us put our own feel and personality into the song. Basically about being on the Jersey Shore, and just kind of, Snake and I didn't want that record on the first, that song on the first record, because everybody was putting out power ballads, and we're just like, we don't want to do what everyone else is doing. And management came down on us. The label was like, listen, you guys are way too young. This is your first album. You're not going to make this kind of decision, career decision. So we're pulling rank. And they put it on. And we were bummed at first, but then all of a sudden when we saw the effect it had on people, and just like, man, that's my story. It's like, that's how I met my wife, or that's how I met my girlfriend. And it's just like, wow, this is cool. This is really cool. Because we told a story in it. We didn't want it to be like, schmaltzy and corny, like a lot, not all, but a lot of power ballads are. And that's why we didn't want, it was that term power ballad that was bothering us more than the song itself, Yeah, it started off as a different story about Snake's brother, and then it with guidance from John Bon Jovi, he said, hey, listen, this is too specific. And he did teach us that, and it always stuck in my head. He's like, man, you guys are so new, you can't write self-indulgent, specific things, because you'll know what it means, and he'll know what it means, but the kids out in Des Moines and the kids out in Seattle have no idea what you're talking about. You got a great foundation for a song. Just draw out of your own experience that relates with like Snake's experience or Scotty's experience, and that's what we did. And with that song, we're like, okay, everybody knew a guy like this. Everybody knew a Ricky that couldn't get out of his own way, that he just so self-destructive, and there was collateral damage, and that's how we told that story. And again, it was one of those things where it's like, in the back of our mind, it's like, okay, is this going to resonate with anyone? And it did. It did in a big, big way. And still to this day, when people come up to me and say that song got them through something, or got them out of an addiction and this and that, and it still blows my mind. It still blows my mind when I hear it, and it's awesome. It's a really good feeling to make that kind of connection with the listener. I played all the bass on both. It was a double records. It was House of Golden Bones, and it was funny. I had met Corey. It was really brief. Those guys, Stone Sour was playing in Carolina Rebellion, and it's when I still lived in Atlanta. And Rob Hammersmith, our drummer, and I were like, man, let's go see this. So we got tickets and passes. We knew a bunch of people in some of the bands, and so we were in catering talking to a guy that was a Skid Row sound man from back in the day. So we're chatting with him. Here comes Corey Taylor. He's like, hey dude, what's up? And he's like, dude, I'm a huge Skid fan. I'm a big Stone Sour fan. I was like, hey dude, it's mutual, blah, blah, blah. We were talking. Manager came up and said, dude, you got to do an interview. And he's like, man, we should talk more after the show. We watched them and we split after the show, never got to talk. But then all of a sudden, I don't know, a year or so later, I see a call coming in from Iowa. I was like, I don't know anyone in Iowa. So I shot at the voicemail, and then I listened to it, and it was Corey. He's like, hey man, we're without bass player and would love for you to do the record. We think it's your style and you could do this kind of stuff. So even if I didn't get it and they decided to go against, I was really, really flattered by the fact that a band like Stone Sour, would ask me to do it. So I call him back, and I was like, hey man, what's happening? We catch up, and he goes, I go, how many, I go, so what's happening? He tells me the whole story, how the bass player left and whatnot, and I go, when and where? He goes, Iowa in about 2.5 weeks. I go, okay, cool, how many songs? He goes, 22, or something like that. I'm like, say again? and it ended up being 1 or 2 less, but so they sent me the demos, and I did my thing, and then they flew me out there, and it was such an amazing experience. I've never met so many creative people in one room in my life. And what was really cool, it was really laid back. Control room door was open. All the guys were in the lounge. I was in with the producer, David Botrell, and the engineer. And say Josh wrote a song. He'd come sit with me, because I mean, it's not Skid Row songs. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of moving parts in their songs. Like 4 or 5 different tunings. And so whenever I'd get to one of their songs, whoever wrote the song, they'd sit with me in the control booth. I was like, dude, just show me that riff real quick. I'm missing a note or two. And I get it and do it. And man, it was like, and I had to do gigs in between. So I basically was there for about 5 days, and 5 full days. And it was one of the greatest experiences, because I'm not crazy about the studio, because it gets very tedious. But I guess because I was just learning constantly, and it was just kind of cool, like with no pressure, you know, I just have to play bass lines. I'm just the bass player. And I don't really have to worry about the outcome, although I took great pride in what I did. And yeah, every year it'll be the anniversary, and one of us, Corey or I, will text each other and be like, another one down. And I can't believe how long ago it's been. It's been over 10 years, I think. We didn't know how big of a Skid Row fan he was. We toured together. His band Heat opened up for Skid Row when we did a run through Europe and I think the UK. And I would hear, well, when I first noticed it was in the ad for the package that was going out. It was us, Heat, this band Vega, and maybe one other band. And I noticed, that's the first time I heard his voice, was in the little clip. And I was like, wow, this guy can really sing. And so we heard him from the dressing room. I go out and watch from the monitor board. Wow. And he's very, like, watching him on stage is so entertaining. So in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, maybe a side project. When we have some downtime, we'll call and see what's up. And then I had heard that he won Idol in Sweden. Did not know that his audition song was 18 in Life until like way after the fact. And when we knew we were going to make the change, I played his version of 18 in Life for the guys and our producer. And everyone's like, what are we waiting for? You know? And I go, okay, now we have to see if he's interested. So I never really contact people through Instagram, but I didn't have any other choice. So I just said, hey dude, great version, 18 in Life. Want to ask you a couple things. So we got on a Zoom, and it was originally to fill in some shows that we couldn't do because of reasons. So he couldn't do them, and we're like, okay. And then our producer's like, well, why don't you just send him some songs and just get an idea if he could pull these songs off that we were doing for this album, The Gang's All Here. And we sent them a couple, and it was like, wow, this is really, really great. And then just the whole story came together, and him with you know, his bone marrow transplant and all this stuff. It's like Snake and I got on a Zoom with him, and we were going to ask him to join the band, and we didn't know what he was going to say. And what was funny is when I said, would you like to be the new singer for Skid Row? He paused and looked down at the ground, and I'm like, oh man, he's gonna say no. He's gonna say no. And I'm like, dude? And he's like, no, yeah, of course, man. He goes, I'm just trying to process this. And I was like, you gave me a heart attack. You gave me a heart attack. And then he recorded all his, we're like, here. And Nick Raskulinix just kept sending him the stereo mixes without vocals. And he'd do your thing, do your thing. And he put a bunch of different ideas down. And Nick, do more of this, don't do that, blah, blah, blah. Same like he did with us. And he recorded all but 2 songs remotely. And we did 2 songs in Las Vegas when we were doing the Scorpions residency. What I didn't know until after the fact, he told me, he goes, man, I had never recorded myself. Did he tell you that? And he's like, and I'm like, I'm so glad I didn't know that ahead of time. I would have been like just pulling hair out. I would have been so stressed, but yeah. And he just fits, like, we all just think the same way and all have the same goals, and it's changed the game for us, man, big time.
You see my face on the TV, you hear my voice on the radio, you see my life